Hey everyone, welcome back to our UI kit series, and today we're going to be taking a look at creating custom reusable UI elements. So this can be things like buttons, labels, everything that the user might be seeing or interacting with. This is how we can create custom reusable ones that you can use in any of your UI kit projects across Xcode and iOS development. So when we're typically creating buttons, we'll kind of do it this way, right? We'll say function, create button, whatever you might want to call it. We'll establish the button, we'll add all the different settings, not too bad, but think about all the different buttons that you're using in your application, as well as what if you're working on multiple apps at the same time, working with a team, and you want to have consistent branding, right? You might be copying and pasting these same buttons, labels, and UI elements. Now, if you want to make that easier on yourself, this is the tutorial for you. Creating a UI library allows you to define once and reuse everywhere, making your apps cleaner and more maintainable. You can see in the other example here, we've established a filled out button, outline button. We're just saying, I want the title to be filled, the style, right? It's so much easier to do it this way. And by creating these custom UI buttons, even with things like cool gradients, you can use this anywhere in your application or move it to another Xcode project. So if this sounds interesting, let's go ahead and dive on in to see how we can make our own custom reusable UI elements. Okay, let's go ahead and create a new project. You can always feel free to add these to any existing ones. iOS app as our template. And let's call this one Custom UI UIKit Example. Make sure our interface is on storyboard, and we don't need any testing or storage systems for this one. So our current plan is we're going to create a custom UI button class, and we're going to call it CustomButton.Swift. But we're not going to be adding it to the hierarchy here. Instead, we're going to go above. You can even right click on this kind of app icon here, and we're going to do a new group here. So new group, and you see that we're going to get a new folder. We can call this one Custom UI Elements. Wonderful. And within this group, go ahead and press the plus button down here. Let's go ahead and create a new empty file. Call this one Custom UI Button. If you want to name it something a little bit more appropriate, feel free to do so. But before we actually start coding, and this is very important when importing or creating new Swift files outside of this folder, go to the right panel inspector here, so it might be hidden, and while selecting the Swift file, click on this little file folder here. It's the file inspector. We're going to navigate to where it says target membership. We're going to press plus, and we're going to check off the custom UI kit example or whatever your app is called. This makes it so it adds this Swift file to the project. If you're finding that your custom UI button can't be found in scope, triple check while selecting the Swift file that the target membership is correctly set to the current app that you're using. Otherwise, you might get that error. Really important. Okay, because we're using UIKit, let's go ahead and import it. And I'm also going to be having different button styles. If you don't want to have different button styles, you can skip this step. But I'm going to create an enum. We're going to call it button style. And this will hold all of the different styles of buttons we're going to be using. I'm going to create a case for filled, as well as for outlined. When you're working in enums, you can either do case, 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 or separate them by comma, both work. Next, we're going to be creating a class, and we'll call it Custom UI Button. And this is going to conform to the UI button. If you're doing things like labels, make sure you conform it to the proper UI element. I'm also going to be going a little above and beyond in mine and doing a gradient layer. So let's go ahead and create a private variable for that now. We'll call it gradient layer. And this is going to conform to a CA gradient layer, and we're also going to make this optional. Because we're using a class, we do need to have an initializer. So let's go ahead and add a init. So when we're thinking of buttons, they often have titles. What does the button say? And this is going to be something that's a string value. And we're also going to be having the style, which is just going to conform to our enum of button style. So after our init, we're going to add some braces here. We're going to add a super.init, and we're going to set up the frame, which is going to start at .0. We'll then set the title, and this is where we can include the title for. So in this case, we're just going to be grabbing the title that we've passed on when we're creating the button, which is in our init here. So we're just going to retype that title. And then the for, we're going to say this is for the .normal. Then we'll go ahead and set up the style. And this is a function that we have yet to create, but we're creating in just a moment. And we're just going to go ahead and pass along the style within that function momentarily. Outside of these braces, you see we're getting a error here, required initializer. And we can just go ahead and press the fix button here, or if you want to type it out, totally up to you, but I like to save time where applicable. So we're getting the other error, we can't find that setup style. Let's go ahead and create that function now. And this one's actually going to be a private function. We'll call it setup style. And in our parameters, we are passing along the style. So we're going to do underscore space style. And we're going to be grabbing the style from the enum we created above. So that's just the button style. This allows us to, if we have a button that's gradient in this case, maybe we have one that's filled, we're also going to be doing one that's kind of empty. Depending on the style, it's going to apply different effects. And we're going to use a switch statement for that so we can handle all the different cases. It also makes it so when you are adding more cases to the enum, adding more things in the switch statement is really easy. Okay, let's make a layer, and we'll also add a corner radius. So I'm going to set this one to be 15. This is totally optional. Fans of the channel know I love a good corner radius. Okay, let's make our switch statement for that style now. That should get rid of our errors. All right, so for the first case we have here, let's go ahead and do filled. So do case space dot filled, and this is where we can add any of the different styling. I'm going to be referencing a function we haven't created to apply a gradient. If you want to set things like the button color, background color, things like that, and you don't want to do gradient, feel free to do it. I'm going to reference a apply gradient, and then I'm also going to set the title color, and I'm going to set this one to be dot white. That should look good on my planned gradient. And under the 4, we're also going to set this to be normal again. Cool, that should be good for that one. Let's go ahead and add another case for the dot outline, which is also in our enums here. Love using enums because this also prevents any spelling mistakes. Use the autofill when you can. And from here, we'll add things like the background color. I'm going to set this to be clear, so there is no background color. We can also add a layer dot border width to change the kind of width of the border that it has. I'm going to set this to be 2, which is not very egregious. And then we're also going to set the border color. And I'm going to set this to be the UI color dot, let's do system blue maybe. You can play around with this, of course, and whatever works best for your custom elements. And this does need to be a dot CG color. Afterwards, we can set the title color, just like we did with the filled one above. And let's have this be dot system blue, same as our outline. That should look pretty cool. And this is also going to be 4.normal. All right, so outside of this function here, let's go ahead and handle the gradient. This is a little bit more advanced. If you wanted to just set this filled one to have a background color of like red or something, right? You can play around and make the buttons your own. I like doing gradients, so I think they're pretty cool, especially if you're doing, you know, some custom UIs. It's like, you know, might as well go all out with it because it's going to be really easy to apply this to anywhere else in your project or other projects in the future. So we're going to create a let statement here, which is going to be for our gradient. We're going to have this equal a CA gradient layer with empty brackets. From here, we're going to be adding a gradient kind of array with all the different colors. So I'm going to do gradients dot colors. And this is going to equal an array. So we're going to use our square brackets. You can see that the Apple Intelligence is a pretty good idea of what we want to do. But essentially, we're just going to choose our UI colors. I'm just going to do 2 here, but you can play around with as many as you'd like. I'm going to do dot. Let's do, I like purple. So let's do dot purple. Dot CG color. And we're going to use a comma to separate all those different things. We'll do UI color dot red dot CG color. Purple and red, that sounds like a pretty cool gradient. Outside of these brackets where you have your different gradient colors, we're going to then add a start point, an end point, and if we want to have any corner radius, which you know I will, we'll go ahead and include that as well. So gradient dot start point, and we can create a CG point from here, and we're going to choose the one with the X, Y value. So I want this to go from left to right. So I'm going to start the X at 0, and then I'm going to set the Y to be 0.5. And you can play around with these if you really want to. Make it your own. I'm going to add the endpoint. We're also going to go ahead and include the CG points. My X for this one's going to be 1, and my Y is going to be 0.5. Next, we'll add the gradient dot corner radius. We're going to have this equal the layer dot corner radius. So in this case, this should equal 15. Cool, we're not quite out of the woods yet. We're going to then have to reference the layer.insert sublayer. And this is where we're going to do the first option where we have the layer. So this is just going to be our gradient that we've created above. And then on the we're going to set this to be 0. And this should push everything kind of to the back. So everything else can be on top of it. And we're going to have the self.gradient layer equal the gradient. Okay, we should be pretty much good to go. Because we are using a gradient, we will want to include one more function. We're actually going to go ahead and override this function, and that is the layout subviews. So this is the thing that lays out those different subviews. We need this for the gradient. So we're going to do super.layout subviews with empty brackets. And we're going to have our gradient layer $.frame equals bounds. So this is going to keep it within the kind of bounds of the button. It's not going to fly off of the screen, kind of creating a gradient everywhere. It's keeping it within that button. Cool. So now we have 2 different buttons that are good to go. All right, we have one more error at the top here. Connector button style. Oh, this doesn't need to be button type. I'm sorry. This should be button style, and that should fix it there. Okay, wonderful. Sorry if you also got that error, but now we should be good to go. So we can hop over to our main, or we can just go to our view controller here, and I'll show you how to call upon those custom buttons. And we'll also do some auto constraints to make sure our app is good to go, and then I'll show you how to add this to other projects, but it's super duper easy. All right, now that we've done our work to create those custom buttons, let's go ahead and establish them. So we'll have our filled button here, and this is going to go ahead and equal the custom UI button. And we can even choose the option with the autofill for title and style. So this first one, I'm just going to give you the title of filled so we know what we're working with. It's in your app, maybe make this like login or something. And then for the style, we're going to want to set this to be one of our enum values, which is either going to be .filled or .outlined. I'm going to do the filled one with the gradient first, and we'll create an outline as well. I'm just going to equal the custom UI button, title style, let's call this one outline, and the style can be set to .outline. Cool, and because we are going to be loading this up, we're going to create a function in our override did load, and we'll call this one setup UI. No parameters here, but this is essentially going to be a function we're creating, setup UI, I'm creating right now, in order to make sure that our buttons are appearing on the screen. We should definitely make sure that we're disabling auto sizing constraints. So for our filled button, translates auto resizing mask constraints, let's have this equal false. And the exact same thing for our outlined button. Even copy and paste if you want to save some time, but I find it's pretty quick just to use the autofill. Now we're going to go to our view.add subview, and we're going to add our filled button. And then we're going to add our view.add subview and our outlined button as well. Really quickly, let's go ahead and add our NS layout constraints here. And we'll do the .activate and add our constraints, which are going to be an array with those square brackets. And we'll do our filled button first, and we can always save some time after. Let's have the .center x anchor. Have the .constraint equal to the view.center x anchor, so that'll put it right in the middle, and a comma, filled button .top anchor, constraint equal to view.safe area layout guide .top anchor. You can add a constant of 100 as well. You can kind of do these as you see fit, but now that we've already established the button, all we're doing is just making sure that the constraints are active. This way it works on everybody's device. We'll do the width anchor as well, and this will be equal to the constant, of 200. And then we can also do the height anchor as well, equal to a constant of 50, comma. And if we really want to save time, I always suggest kind of using the copying and pasting, and our good friend of selecting at the end of the first one, Control Shift, and clicking on the multiple lines. And let's change this to outlined button instead. And because this is going to be underneath that one, let's go ahead and adjust the top anchor. And instead of it being equal to the view safe area guide, let's make this equal to the filled button. So it's going to be underneath it. And we can also reduce the constant a little bit, maybe 20, and that should do us well. Let's go ahead and run this app and see how it looks, and then I'll show you how to add all these custom UI elements to any of your other UI kit projects. Okay, we can see that we have it here. I may have made the top anchor a little too not close enough. We can also actually just change this to be the bottom anchor instead. That would probably work a little bit better. Let's go ahead and see this with those really quick updates. Okay, that looks a lot better. We can see that we have our custom UI elements of the filled gradient button, and we also have the outline one. If we were to go in here and change, like say, the gradient colors, we would see this apply. But this is really great if you want to have these constant custom colors or these custom UI elements throughout your application. Let's go ahead and see how we can add this to another project. So a big reason why I suggest putting in an above file is you can see here we have the custom UI elements, and this file folder has all of our Swift files in it. So when we go ahead and add the things like the labels, what you're able to do is you can like even copy and paste these. So if you want to select this one, right click, copy, or Command C. If you go to another project, so I have another project open next to it in Finder, we can go ahead and paste this. So this is a custom animation one. Let's go ahead and open this up. And let's just drag and drop it in. And create the groups, hit finish. And now we'll go to our custom UI button. We'll click on this file here and just to make sure that it's added. We can see it's already been added to the animations example. Now, if we were to go to our view controller, right, we can go ahead and reference our button. So let some button equals, and then we're going to go ahead and reference our custom UI button, title, style, right? Ooh, and then the style is going to be the dot filled. And we can go ahead down here, set up our UI, right? But you'll see that we're able to just reference this custom button in this other UI kit project, which is so great. You can share this with a team, make sure that your branding is consistent throughout your different applications within the same app. This is going to save you so much time. Alrighty, if you want to learn how to do the custom UI labels, let's go ahead and see how we can do that as well. All right, let's create a new empty file here. We'll call this one custom UI label. Make sure that we're importing our good friend of UIKit. And from here, let's create a class of the custom label. If you really want to do an enum for this one as well, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we're going to conform it to the UI label, and we're going to initialize, just for now, just some text, which is going to be a string. And add a brace here. And we're going to super.init. We're going to set the frame, so it's going to be .0. And we're going to reference the self.text. And this is just going to equal whatever text the user is inputting. We don't know what it's going to be now. So for this class itself, the text is just going to be whatever the text we're initializing it with when we're calling upon it. Here we can also adjust things like the font. So let's have this be a UI font.bold system font of size 18. And we also mess with things like the text alignment. And let's have this equal .center. We even mess with the text color. I'm gonna have this one be dark gray. And we can even have the translate auto sizing mask into constraints also equal false up here. We are getting the error, required initializer unavailable. I would suggest just using the fix here, but now this is going to ensure that the custom labels follows a consistent design. No need to manually set the font, color, alignment every single time. If you just want to go to your view controller, right, let custom label equals custom label with the text, hello world. Make sure you initialize it in the setup UI, right? Add the constraints if you need to, but this allows you to customize as many UI elements as you can and reuse them. What we built today is a fully reusable UI kit button with multiple styles. We've integrated it into our view controller using auto layout, and we even created a custom label to further enhance the UI library. You can add as many things within this kind of folder here. I sometimes even just have a Xcode project where I'm just testing out different UI elements. Then I'll copy and paste that folder into other projects to make sure that I have a consistent theme going. So this matters because it speeds up development by reducing UI redundancy, ensures a consistent look and feel across the app, and encourages clean modular UIKit code. So next steps you might want to take: add a custom text field or card view components, experiment with dark mode themes, and try animating buttons on tap for even more interactivity. And that's it for today. Let me know in the comments below what UI components you're customizing, and we'll see you in the next one. Remember to dream big, code bigger, like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.